Welcome to the Explainer. So, today we're looking at something that has just absolutely exploded in recent years: the massive boom in remote ultramarathons and wilderness endurance events. I mean, we're currently seeing nearly 400,000 individuals tackling these grueling courses worldwide. But, with this huge surge comes a really critical life or death challenge. How do organizers actually plan to keep runners alive out in the wild? Well, today we're going to break down a fascinating framework, specifically the 3 levels of care designed by medical directors to ensure you cross the finish line or, well, at the very least, make it back to civilization in one piece. All right, let's dive right into this. Picture this for a second. You're running a marathon right in the middle of a major city. If you twist your ankle or worse, suffer a cardiac event, an ambulance is literally minutes away. But what happens when that exact same disaster strikes 50 miles deep into a remote forest or halfway up a mountain? You're not just dealing with a medical emergency anymore. You are suddenly dealing with a profound geographical and logistical crisis. So here's our roadmap for today. We're going to cover the wilderness problem, defining the field, the 3 levels of care, choosing the right level, and finally, medical nuances.
Section 1. The wilderness problem.
The root of this whole issue? Explosive growth. We're seeing a massive influx of both younger novices and older athletes out on the trails who are managing chronic conditions, and it really highlights a fundamental difference. At an urban event, hospitals are minutes away. But in a wilderness event, you're hours from care, navigating rugged terrain where ambulances simply cannot go. When rare complications like frostbite or lightning strikes happen out there, the lack of a safety net is absolutely catastrophic. Section 2. Defining the field. To plug this massive safety gap, a brand new medical subspecialty was actually created: wilderness event medicine. The clinical definition here is incredibly specific, and it relies heavily on logistics rather than just, the beautiful scenery. It's defined as any gathering with over 200 participants where the time from injury to hospital care is likely greater than 1 hour. That time distance from definitive care, that 1 hour mark, is absolutely crucial. It changes everything about how medical support has to be staged.
Now, what's really fascinating is this number: 17. A study on Mount Washington found 17 medical presentations per 1,000 person days. That rate is actually highly comparable to urban mass gatherings, like a busy rock concert or a major city marathon. So the frequency of people getting hurt or sick doesn't actually skyrocket just because you're in the wild. The injury rates mirror urban events. But it's the location, being stranded miles and miles from a hospital, that transforms a routine medical issue into a deadly threat.
Section 3. The 3 levels of care. And this brings us to the core focus of our explainer today. To protect runners without totally overburdening local 911 systems, medical directors use a 3-level framework. We'll start at the baseline, Level 3 care. This is the bare minimum, used for shorter, lower-risk races. Notice the emphasis here is strictly on self-care. Yes, there are basic first aid kits, but you're patching your own blisters. There are no dedicated medical personnel, no mandatory pre-race screenings. Emergency transport is alerted and on standby, but ultimately, you are largely responsible for yourself. Now, let's step it up to Level 2 care, the intermediate tier. Here is where we introduce actual clinical staff. These races require an on-call physician medical director and at least one medical professional, like a paramedic or a nurse, at designated stations. And for races pushing past 80 kilometers, these stations are strategically dropped right around the midpoint. That's exactly where fatigue and injuries peak. The staff here are actually equipped to fight back against serious threats like hypothermia and anaphylaxis. And finally, Level 1 care. This is maximum support. Honestly, we're talking about virtually building a mini hospital right out in the woods. Required for massive or highly extreme multi-day events, Level 1 demands a full on-site medical team and physician for every 500 runners. The stations are spaced out every 30 to 60 kilometers, and they are heavily stocked. We're talking IV fluids, ADDs, point-of-care blood analyzers, the whole shebang. At this extreme tier, pre-race medical screenings are mandatory, and directors coordinate rigorously with local search and rescue teams. Section 4. Choosing the right level. So, with 3 vastly different setups, how do race directors actually decide which level to deploy? I mean, which level do you think a 50-mile trail run with 150 people needs? What about a 100-mile mountain race? Well, they don't just guess. They run the event details through a strict algorithm. Here are the exact factors they look at. First, the total number of participants. Crossing the threshold of 100 or 500 runners bumps up the required care. They look at distance, too. Anything over 80 kilometers triggers a higher level. Then there's extreme remoteness, meaning large parts of the course literally cannot be accessed by any type of vehicle. And finally, severe environmental conditions, things like extreme heat, freezing temperatures, or high lightning risks. Crossing any of these thresholds dictates stepping up from a basic level 3 to a level 2 or fully equipped level 1. Section 5, Medical Nuances. As we pivot into our final section, we really need to look at some specific, honestly kind of controversial medical guidelines that might just upend what you thought you knew about running. The absolute crucial point is this. NSAIDs like ibuprofen should be entirely eliminated from ultramarathon aid stations. I know, a lot of runners pop vitamin I like candy to deal with muscle pain during a race. But during extreme endurance events, NSAIDs dramatically increase the risk of acute kidney injury and a super dangerous condition called rhabdomyosis. That's where muscle tissue actually breaks down and poisons your blood. So the medical consensus is crystal clear. Taking them on the trail is incredibly risky. And here's another highly counterintuitive rule for you. We're constantly told to consume salt to prevent cramping, right? Well, research shows that sodium supplements are generally totally unnecessary for events under 30 hours. In fact, over-consuming salt is dangerous. It gives runners a false sense of security, which leads them to drink way too much water. And that triggers exercise-associated hyponatremia. It's a deadly form of water intoxication where your brain literally swells. I mean, no way, right? But it's true. For races up to 30 hours, a normal race diet provides all the sodium you actually need. Finally, let's talk about the absolute hardest decision a medical director ever has to make: canceling the whole event. You don't just tough it out when lives are on the line. Automatic triggers for cancellation include unanticipated extreme temperature drops or thunderstorms on exposed terrain where there isn't any shelter. But a major modern trigger is wildfires. If smoke pushes the air quality index over 150, it is considered too hazardous to run. Furthermore, if a local wildfire means the ultramarathon is straining local 911 resources and interfering with actual first responders, the race gets shut down immediately. These wilderness events push human endurance to the absolute limit. But surviving them, that relies on a massive hidden infrastructure of medical planning, those 3 vital levels of care we talked about, and some very strict physiological guidelines. Ultimately, the safety net is thin by design, so it leaves us with this final thought. Are you truly prepared to be your own first responder the next time you step up to the starting line in the wild? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.